Life. It's just one big story, isn't it?
Hi everybody, welcome to the Story Connection. I'm your host, Donna Wilberg. Well, today our guest is not only a transplant from England, he is an award-winning author who has written books that make Alfred Hitchcock seem like a choir boy. He's referred to by his peers as a dark, demented angel, but to me, he's just one really sweet guy. Please meet Simon Wood.
Thank you for having me.
Well, it's great to have you on, and you know you're such an icon in the community. It's a wonderful thing to have you on board with us today. But we're going to start out with a little bit of your background. You're kind of a daredevil. You want to talk about some of the things that you're involved in?
When I was about 20, I got into motor racing, and I used to race open wheel cars all around the UK in different championships. And when I went bankrupt at 25, I moved on to airplanes. I was learning to fly. I had a terrible fear of heights, and I thought this was a kill or cure approach, was to take on flying. And I had a good time. I only had to crash land once.
Oh, no.
And then when I've done skydiving and things like that, but that was more just to see what it was like. But now I compete in sort of cycle races and things like that. That's sort of something a little bit quieter to do.
So is it the speed that you like, or is it the challenge?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do like the adventure of speed and things like that, but I think there's also that desire for can I do better than I did the time before? With the racing, I was trying to get that perfect lap, which will never come. It'll never exist. It's a fool's errand. And it's the same with cycling. It'll only be as good as I am, because there's a lot of me having to, a lot of energy and effort and tactics that you have to bring into it. And, you know, I'm yet to be put in that perfect race, that perfect event. One day.
One day.
I have to have that carrot.
Well, how did you start writing? Where did that come in the picture?
I have the INS and immigration to thank for my writing career. My wife is American. We'd met in Costa Rica, traveling. I used to travel to lots of different places around the world, and we'd met and we stayed in touch for a couple of years. And we decided that one of us would have to make the jump because the commute was too long. And
Yeah.
I moved to the US because everybody told me, don't worry, it'll be easy to get a job. And it proved not to be so. The INS process is very long and slow. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get arrested, even if I tried, I think, at that point. And so it was just a thing of, for some reason, I just wanted to experiment with stories. It was something I'd never done before. I won't say I didn't have any interest in it, but it was more things in my head, and I just sat down and taught myself how to write books and how to write stories. I just picked things apart. I didn't have the courage to go to a class, so I just sort of worked away in a little room to see if I could work out what it was to tell a story.
Well, obviously, you accomplished your goal and had your perfect lap, because how many books do you have?
I think it's over a dozen right now.
Wow. And they're award-winning bestsellers. They're fantastic. So you really have done the INS proud.
Yeah. I have a lot to thank for them. I'm just never going to give them a cut of the profits. But
What was your first book?
Accidents Waiting to Happen.
Okay.
It was set in Sacramento. I used to live here. So it was something where I was learning my new surroundings. So I used to cycle around looking for places to kill people. Yeah, not literally, but yeah.
And we didn't tell the INS that.
No.
That's kind of funny. You know, we don't screen people well enough that come in our country.
No.
Well, you've certainly from there, you know, that was a success. You went on to was the next book that you did.
I think I had a short story collection because I was basically learning the craft on short stories. You can do an awful lot of things wrong and right in a very short period of time. And so I think I had 2 short story collections out. One was called Dragged into Darkness, and the next one was called Working Stiffs. And then Paying the Piper was the next book. But there was like, you know, a couple of years gap between those.
So once you finished your short story collections, what motivated you to do another full novel?
It's usually I'm looking for a topic. I'm very driven by either something that I see in the press or I see in life and things, and I want to jump on that. I'm sort of like, you know, the first spark is usually a situation, not necessarily a character or a storyline or anything. It's like, I want to write about this. So with Accidents Waiting to Happen, it was a thing about a weird insurance arrangement that no one was really aware of, that I picked up on, and it's like, this is a bad idea that no one's realised yet, and it's good thriller fodder. And I picked away, you know, researched that and used that as a basis. And for Paying the Piper, I wanted to do a kidnapping story, but I didn't want to do a conventional story, and I didn't want the ransom to be money. And so it was something to create a story around that. So they just sort of like usually come from something like that.
Do you bounce these ideas off your wife, Julie?
I kind of do, because it's that thing of seeing her, you know, give a thumbs up, thumb down to it, or maybe that sounds nice, dear. But it's more the thing of like whether I'm excited about it. And I have a big whiteboard that I will just write down, you know, and literally just a bullet point idea for what a book could be about. And so there's like dozens of those in my little office. That are there waiting for, you know, an extra spark to be able to take that to the next level, because I have to feel that I can actually carry this off for 300 pages or whatever it is.
Let's talk about your award winners.
It's been an interesting thing in that it's been a lot of the short stories been recognised here and in the UK. So for Working Stiffs, there was a story called My Father's Secret, which won the Anthony Award. And that was based on a very old recording of Ian Fleming interviewing Raymond Chandler when he had come to the UK. And he talked about the mob and how the mob would would orchestrate a hit. And it was just very fascinating. And I just wanted to do it as a father and son business. And it's the son being brought into the fold. And so it's almost like a little stage play. It literally is 2 guys in a room. And that's all it is. But it's the relationship you build up in that room between these 2 people. And then in the UK, there was it received a Dagger nomination for a story called The Taskmasters, which was about a guy who can't keep a job, control his life or anything like that, and he's always getting into fights or whatever, and then a man just taps on the shoulder and says, I can turn your life around for you.
Oh boy.
You just have to join the Taskmasters. And then he finds out what the Taskmasters do, and it's not necessarily change his life, but maybe improving his skills.
Wow.
And then the Framemaker was another Anthony Award nominee, and that was about a guy who frames people. He's a professional framer. So if you have like somebody you want to take the fall for a crime of any sort, you hired the Framemaker, and he will construct a narrative that police will believe.
Wow. I'm hearing myself ask this, where do you come up with these ideas? But you've got a mind that just is just amazing. you know, to take something and to spin a story, not only just a story, but, you know, you've got some full novels here. That takes a lot of work and a lot of research and stuff. Do your ideas ever fizzle out? Do you ever get to a point where you say, you know, maybe this wasn't such a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that probably will never see the light of day. Mm-hmm. There's things that, you know, where I've written them on the whiteboard and it's like, that is an awesome idea. And then 3 weeks later you go, that was mediocre at best. And, you know, it's just that thing of like, I just don't feel the confidence in the idea.
Yeah.
And it may take years, you know, for something to actually develop enough of an energy for it to that it's like, oh yeah, this is something I can be excited about for the next 6 months of sitting down and keeping this as an idea that will get pulled out into a full-length novel. But I think I do have an instinct for something that is, this is a novel idea or this is a short story idea. You know, it's that thing of like, I can't stretch this piece of elastic to make this into a full book, but this will be a really interesting 20, 30 page story. Mm-hmm. And that's as far as it'll go, kind of thing.
Well, let's talk about your latest book, the one that got away, because that's dealing with survival guilt. And you had to do a lot of research for that book. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, again, it was that thing. I wanted to follow a topic, and I just wanted to talk about survivor guilt. And it was that thing of, I kind of know what survivor guilt was. I could recognize it if it was on a shelf in the supermarket, but that was about it. And I had met a psychologist, and I said, you know, I want to tackle this topic. And they said, you need to go to the Veterans Administration. And I went, no, it's not about soldiers, it's about an ordinary person. And they went, you need to go to the Veterans Administration.
Talk a little bit, tell the audience a little bit what the story's about, because it's fascinating.
So what I wanted to do was create a scenario where at the beginning of one of those lose-lose decisions. And so it's about two women who are abducted on the way home from a road trip. And one of the women has to make the decision. She can either run and save herself, or she can stay and make a futile attempt to save her and her friend. And she makes the decision to run and survive, which is all well and good at the beginning. But then you fast forward like 15, 18 months later, and she's no longer the person you saw on page one. She's trying, you know, she's basically torpedoed her own career, and now she is a mall cop in the worst mall that she could find. She goes out and parties too hard and alone just to see what happens, and she's basically someone who is trying to put herself back in the scenario that got her abducted in the first point. And it's all behaviour that people with PTSD exhibit. It's that thing of almost wanting to, you feel bad for surviving, you feel bad for making it through something, so you put yourself back either in direct kind of environments or slightly manufactured environments because you almost want to lose. And so her life that she's built for herself is this sort of like semi-self-destructive behaviour, and that changes when she sees on the news a crime scene that closely resembles hers, and so she then says to the police, "I'm one of the victims, but I got away, and I want to find this guy," and it gives her a purpose.
Yeah.
But it also falls back into that behaviour of that she's putting herself back in the gun sight of her would-be killer.
That's fascinating. Just totally fascinating.
But a lot of that came from the discussions with the psychologist about that, you know, if I sort of like basically just sketched that kind of, you know, that kind of setup to them and said, what do I do next with it? And they said, well, this is the kind of things that these people would do. And then you sort of like see potential scenes to illustrate that kind of behaviour, and you start building a story around what they give you. And they just gave me a lot of things that I could build a character around, because, you know, they start off very linear and very one-dimensional. But I was very proud of Zoe, who's the woman in the book, because it was, I felt that she grew from those conversations. And it's been interesting to get feedback from women who have been in either stalked, abducted, or who've read the book and sort of come back and said, it's either a little bit of an eye-opener for them, that they never really thought about themselves in those terms, or it was something like, this is kind of things that I did.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you've written so many books. Is there a particular favorite that you have, or a couple favorites that you have?
I think I'm still very proud of Paying the Piper. It was about the fourth book I'd written, but it was the second to be released. They never come out in the chronological order of in the way you write them. And I think I like that one because I think it's a very fun idea of, I wanted to have a central character who had made a prideful mistake at the beginning, something that happens off the page, and it comes back to haunt him in later years. And it was one where I went into the FBI and said, it's about kidnapping, and I said, I want to kidnap a child. What would happen? And I always want to be slightly incendiary with the question, but because it provokes a response.
Yeah.
And it was a thing of like, it got very quiet in the room with them, and they said, we'd catch you, and I went, no, I know that, but what would happen? They go, it doesn't matter, we'd catch you. And I went, I know, I don't want to be caught on page 10. I went, we got to get this thing out to page 300. He goes, don't worry, we'd catch you. And I thought, I've sort of painted myself into a corner, and we sort of stop, let's restart this. And they started just talking about the types of kidnapping. Is it for profit? Is it more of a blood relation kind of thing? And I was picking something that was nothing that was in their sort of playbook. Mm-hmm. Because they literally do have a playbook on how you should handle things. And there is a kidnapping playbook. And it was sort of like, well, if that's how you do it, how do I work around it? So it was just sort of like in-person interviews and repeated little phone calls of just saying, what would you do if this happened? And it's like, and they would say, well, we'd act like that. And it's like, well, that means I can work around you. And it just sort of played into that mischievous kind of thing of building a story around something that, isn't something they are ready for.
Yeah.
And it just kind of eventually built something that I hadn't expected. And it's become a little bit of the fan favourite between readers. It's the one that they always say that's the one you need to read first to be acclimatised to the kind of stories that I tell. And so I'm still quite proud of it. Plus, it was written really, really quickly. I was on a short deadline, and I had to really be almost perfect with that one first time out.
You almost have to be a little bit careful about the questions you ask, don't you? I mean, when you're researching a book, even your computer, some of the things that you're looking up. I mean, really.
Oh yeah,
if there's a big brother, they're going to be
I
looking
have
at you
sort of
first.
made friendships with people in law enforcement, and they are my bail money.
Okay.
Kind of thing of like, if my Google history gets me into trouble, it's like, George, will you come and help me? Can you explain?
Is this George Fun?
Yeah, and it's sort of that thing of having someone that will at least vouch for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do wonder if am I triggering things off? Because you may go through a day, poisons, kidnapping, how to make a bomb. I'm actually doing a lock-picking class in a couple of weeks.
Great.
Because I just saw that and went, I need to know that. I don't know if I need to know it for a book, but it'd just be entertaining to just understand it. And not all this stuff comes to makes it to the page, but if I understand it and if I do it, then I can, write from a place of confidence. The worst thing I don't want to do is make it a how-to guide on how to do, abduct people or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just need to know how to do it.
Yeah.
And do it well, hopefully.
Well, it makes it more real for your reader.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's talk about the soft, fuzzy side of you, the humanitarian side. You adopt or foster animals.
Yeah, we've sort of our local vet has actually classified us as a rescue group,
Okay.
which means we get a slight discount on their services and things. But no, for probably the last 15 years or so, me and my wife have been adopting animals and fostering animals and taking them off of, doggy death row, because the kill shelters gives them X days, and you start to comb down, and it's like we need to do something. So we've just adopted 2 of our fosters, so we're now back up to 5 cats again. But we've probably had about 70 or 80 cats, dogs and things through our door over the last decade or so. And we usually, have them for a few months or a few weeks, and then they get moved on to somebody else. But the ones that we keep tend to be the ones who've got his jaw doesn't set properly, or they can't metabolize food and we have to make it from scratch every day. So we've got all the ones that no one would ever take, kind of thing, or they have a hard time finding the home. So we've got this sort of the unwantables at home.
Aw, that's a big responsibility. And what a lovely thing to do. I mean,
it's just thing. I've had long-haired Dachshunds since I was a little boy, and I always got them from breeders when I was growing up. And then just here, we just saw how many are sort of unclaimed. Even show dogs. Show dogs once they get to the end of their showing life, race, greyhounds and things like that, they end up going, well, we don't want them anymore. And so, we looked at ex-show dogs and things like this, and there's quite a lot there's rescue groups for every breed that you like, and there's a lot of animals looking for homes. So, so we've had one long hair that's been with us for 15 years now.
Wow.
I met him stealing melon from a pig. But yeah, we've just had a lot of them, and it's very good because he's a good sort of trainer dog who, with other animals that come on who come into the house who aren't as well behaved or whatever, get to take cues from him, and it helps settle them down and make them more adoptable in the when it comes their time to find a new home.
Wow. Well, we're to that 5-minute mark, believe it or not. Why don't you give your information so people at home can get in touch with your books and look you up and figure you out?
Yeah, my website is just simonwood.net. It's has links to Facebook, Twitter, and everything else in between. So as long as you go to that one, you'll have a central clearinghouse for finding me in all my other little places. My books are available on Amazon. The audio versions are available on audible.com. And you should be able to find the books in the bookstores too. So I'm fairly easy to find.
Good. All right. Well, we've got some information about the Paranormal Connection, the Story Connection coming up here shortly. So why don't we take a look at that?
The Story Connection airs the second and fourth Thursday at 9:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our companion show, Paranormal Connection, airs the first and third Thursdays of each month. Each episode repeats the following Friday at 1:30 p.m. and Saturday at 5:30 a.m. Watch these programs online at the same airtimes by going to accesssacramento.org and clicking Watch 17. In the Sacramento region, you can see us on Comcast Channel 17 and on AT&T Channel 99. You can find previously aired shows on the Story Connection YouTube channel. For information on upcoming shows and previous Story Connection guests, go to storyconnectiontv.blogspot.com. You can contact us at storyconnectiontv@gmail.com, and don't forget, find us on Facebook, become a friend, and become a fan.
All right. There you have it.
We're done. Yeah.
So, you also have just started raising bees.
Yes, we have our own honey label.
Okay.
We started. My wife is a genetic scientist, and she was seeing that the bees were, that the bees are dying off, and she wanted to see if we could try and keep them because we'd seen the bees disappear from our garden, And so for the last 3 or 4 years, we started with 1 hive, we now have 3. And we've been trying to keep the bee population alive. And it's just been a very fascinating sort of thing of watching it out the window on the way they work, because it wasn't what I had expected. And the little side effect was that each hive produces about 70 to 80 pounds of honey a year. And so that's an awful lot of scones and crumpets that I'm supposed to eat to cover that. So that's when we came up with our own little cottage industry that we now sell honey.
Oh, that's
into
great.
stores.
What's the label?
It's called Wildcat Canyon Honey.
Wow.
And so we've been selling the honey for the last 2 or 3 years.
I like that.
And it's interesting because half the clientele are people with allergies.
Oh.
So it's that thing, you're supposed to eat honey from where you live. So we've got this very concentrated ring of people within a couple of miles of where we live who come to the door. I think people are worried that we may be drug dealers.
I like that. You're killing people on the page and you're saving animals.
Yeah,
and bees.
stopping people from sneezing locally.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're out of time, and I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all your wonderful information and talking about your books. It's been a delight getting to know more about you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And I want to thank my fabulous crew. Everybody's a volunteer here, and we couldn't do the show without you. So we've got Laura and Ted and Lorene and David and Rick and Cassandra here today, who are doing their best to get this show out to you, and we really appreciate them as well. So when someone comes up and says, "What's your story?" be ready, because you never know when you'll end up on a show like this one. So with that, we're going to say good night.